Wow.
Right. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling from. My name is Nicole Holybar-Walker, and I serve as the Managing Director of Alumni Engagement within Leadership Engagement here at the Emory Alumni Association. So before we get started, we have a few housekeeping announcements to share for today's session. Firstly, this session is being recorded. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to share your question in the chat box or by raising your hand. Jodie looks forward to hearing your questions. We'll try to answer them throughout, but if we don't have time, we'll make sure that they get answered towards the end. So with that, I'm very excited to welcome our featured coach today, Jodie Charlop. Jodie is the founder of Potential Matters and coaching partner with the Emory Alumni Association since I think the program's inception in 2004.
Yeah, 20
Yeah.
years almost. Yeah.
Yeah, one of our originals.
Yeah.
So Jodie specializes in working with 10 plus year professionals who want greater control over their career future. Jodie's home base is here in Atlanta, but you can find her coaching via phone or Zoom with clients from across the globe, from Atlanta to Wall Street to London to Hong Kong. While her rich business and coaching experiences enable her to coach individuals, leaders, and teams in diverse settings, from high growth to Fortune 500, Jodie has a special affinity for helping professionals build careers that matter and navigate the natural and often turbulent twists and turns that occur in professional lives. So join me in welcoming Jodie.
Thank you, Nicole. It's so great to be back. And just in terms with the alums in the group. So delighted to be here and talk to the group. It's a nice sized group today. So really looking forward to the discussion. This is actually one of my favorite topics because um, it is really important given what's going on in the world today, the crazy amount of volume of work people have, the work-life issues, just the complexity that we're living and leading in. So delighted to share some time and space with you to talk about fighting the good fight to create a space to lead. I'm a proud Emory alum myself. I 82 Oxford and 84 College. I've had a chance to be part of the alumni community and really originated the coaching program for 10 plus years. 10 plus year alums, gosh, 20 years ago. It's just hard to believe. And as you said, today I have a nice mix of clients where I work with individuals, I work with teams, I work with companies, all in honor of helping people build careers that matter and become leaders that matter. And so today is really a blended topic because, to really be a great leader, you got to be a great human. And to be a great human, you got to have space to lead. So we're going to talk a little bit about the interaction of value is not volume. And some of our habits may be paradoxically holding us back. So let's get started on the topic. Let's just talk a little bit about what's happening in the workplace. World is a changing, lot going on. How many of you feel like you might have 2 or 3 jobs? Demands feel out of control. I want to give you a chance to just kind of talk to colleagues about what do you experience. I've been coaching for 20 years and kind of even pre-pandemic, we were seeing kind of the speed and the complexity and the multifaceted things, the demands. The world is going faster. And, we feel like, I always say life and work sometimes feels like a bad episode of Twister. Cows are coming at us and tractor trailer trucks are flying over our head and we're trying to take shelter and get to places. And so it's really quite chaotic and busy. So connection before content is a really important thing as we and it's a good leadership trait. As you come from one meeting to another, you might have a little emotional contagion. Taking connection time actually clears the brain. It clears the cache of the brain, provides psychological safety. So we're going to talk a little bit about just have a few minutes to connect, introduce yourself to a colleague, and just talk about what you're experiencing in the workplace today, just right now. And we're going to use a little exercise called What's weird, hard, scary, and stupid? Um, if I can get to that slide. Great. What's weird, hard, scary, and stupid about leading and working in today's crazy environment? So, Alicia, my virtual producer, is going to break us out. We're going to get 5 minutes. Introduce yourself. Small group, just have a chance to meet another alum. And just hear what's happening. What's weird, hard, stupid, and scary about working in today's crazy world?
Open the rooms now.
Great.
Okay, I had to do, oh,
Awesome. Let me know when we're back.
okay, we're all back.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, hopefully you had a minute of connection. What's weird, hard, scary, and stupid about leading in today's time is actually not leading in today's time, but just thinking about Paul Jackson. Hi, Paul. And thinking back how long ago it seems like yesterday I was at Oxford. How time flies. It's so amazing. All right. Well, what is weird, hard, scary, and stupid about leading and working in today's crazy busy world? Let's just take speaking of great leaders, let me ask room one. Renita Anderson, you're an awesome leader. What's weird and hard and scary and stupid today about what'd you guys talk about?
Yeah, part of what we covered was the hybrid versus in office and the difficulty, even if you want to go back to the office and your colleagues aren't back, and really trying to manage those new ways of connecting and leading when
Yeah.
you've got people with such different needs.
Yeah, it's really hard, and we're new rhythms, and it's hard. It's hard to kind of create new rhythms, and hard to kind of keep that connection. Absolutely, I hear a lot of that in coaching and teams, and we're still trying to figure it out. The world's super messy. Who else? Who else had what's weird, hard, scary, and stupid about the workplace today?
I'll volunteer too.
Awesome. Thanks, Gina.
So we talked about in our room about having to wear multiple hats and being able to manage the multiple hats that we wear at work. Also, a company being acquired and what that means for your role, and also being in transition and looking for your next opportunity.
Yeah, Gina, it probably feels like you've got like multiple jobs, multiple roles, multiple agendas. It's a lot going on. We feel like we're juggling. We feel like we're juggling more than we ever, and it feels like it's getting faster, or at least that's how clients are experiencing it. One more. Who else? What do you experience? What's hard, stupid, or scary about what's going on in our work world as we're trying to lead and have careers that matter? One more.
Hey, Jody, I can jump in. It's Maureen.
Oh, awesome. Hi, Maureen.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about AI because it's all in the buzz right now, both how it impacts our work, how it's helpful, how it's not, even making the space and time to play around with it, depending on our roles, to see where it can help and where it can't, and knowing when it's a good investment and when it's not. But adding that layer onto, for many of us already doing multiple jobs, right? Makes it even harder to think about that.
New technologies, new ways of working, new things. What's it going to do? It's a little scary on some sense. I just kind of recently drew a post, on LinkedIn about that, and sometimes there's a light and a dark side of everything. And so, but learning new, and it sometimes, we hear scary things about it, but then there's also really amazing things about it. So how are you kind of making sense of all the things that are happening? Because we're really leading in a very complex world, and we're multitasking, and life is going on. And so that's what we're going to talk about today in terms of connecting and really thinking through. And I'm sorry, my little mouse is going crazy. But that's what we're going to talk about and what this means. And there is a lot going on. And today is really about awareness in terms of thinking through, we're living in exponential times, and how is that impacting us as professionals and as leaders, right? And I want to talk about something really important because we're in this busy society. Things are coming, and when it goes faster, for those of you, and I'm dating myself, it's kind of like that episode of I Love Lucy where Lucy's like working on a chocolate assembly line, and all of a sudden, she's doing a really good job, and then it starts speeding up, and then she's putting chocolate in her pockets and in her mouth and all of this. We're living an episode of I Love Lucy. It's coming faster than we can take it off the assembly line. And so, what are the implications of that to your career and leadership? And so, I think it's a really super important thing because we got to fight the good fight to have a space to lead. And I'm just going to talk about We're just going to talk about a few things to be mindful about how you are mindful about your value and your contributions, right? Because doing more does not make you more valuable, right? Like there's a paradox where we volume over value. And so how we begin to impact our careers and our lives, and then really hopefully leave you with some intention today to think about creating a path to greater control and impact. Because I think one thing that we know, whether you're early in your career or late in your career or mid in career, we all know that our universal journey is on impact, that we want to make a difference. We want to have impact, whether it's in our work, in our communities, in our home. And to do that, we have to be very intentional that our time is a precious asset. So I'm going to have a chance to talk about that today. So, all right, because we're living in a new era, right? More uncertainty, complexity. Well, they call it a VUCA world. The U.S. Army War College started studying this around 1989. The world's speeding up, right? There's just more happening. Obviously, with social media, information overload, things are coming at us. Like I said, it's like an episode of Twister. We've got phones coming at us and emails coming at us and the world coming at us and mergers and acquisitions and new teams and distributed workflow and global teams. And we're on a hybrid and then we're in the room. It's like we're just lots of change, lots of complexity going on, more so than ever. And we're right in the middle of it in terms of our lives, and it's 3D. It's happening. Used to it's like, oh, we're going to do a change initiative. We're going to work through this. But today, change is really 3D. It's occurring all the time, right? It's like hard to catch breath. It's pervasive. It's impacting every aspect of our life. Our kids are changing. They're going to school. Our parents are aging. um, you know, do I stay in this career? Do I leave this career? Do I have a choice? Because we just got merged and acquisition. There's just a lot of volatility, and it's just happening in all aspects of our life. And also, we know it's exponential. It's happening at a rate that, candidly, sometimes it's just hard to catch breath and keep up with. And so the speed of change is happening. And so we feel like we're doing a lot of dancing and maneuvering. So, what does that mean for our life and careers? Um, one of the things we always talk about is how do you survive in all this chaos? And one of the things we talk about is minds to thrive. And this actually comes from a lot of research, and even the World Economic Forum has been studying. And for the first time, we're seeing soft skills really show up that in a crazy busy world, how do we deal with it? And the reality is we got to strap a saddle on it emotionally, really like empathy and kindness to ourselves, that we're in this crazy storm. And so how can we be kind to ourselves and others in this crazy busy world? Are we being open and talking about it? We're not in a world we can control anymore. We want to control it. We feel like we need to control it. We need a semblance of control. Control sometimes get a bad rap. We need to feel that sense of grounding, but we also have to recognize that we need a lot of dance moves to survive and dance in this crazy chaos. Also, transparency, keeping it real. We're all going through the same thing, right? If you think other people have it all together and they're having the same headwinds that we are, lots of change, lots of things going on. We all just deal with it and present it in different ways. So resilience and creativity to solve crazy problems in this crazy world are really the skills that, as you think about building a career that matters, really having an opportunity to work, grow, and develop to survive in this crazy world, it's really going to require that agility in our humanness. So very, very important to think about as we're continuing to grow, because resilience really is an inside job, how I stand in the storm, right? And so it's just a great way to remind ourselves to thrive is to be kind to ourselves in this crazy, messy world. And, it's not, and we're seeing, and one of the great things that came out of the pandemic, and I think is really a refreshing piece, is, the impact on our mental health, right? And just, we have a colleague that's doing a lot of work with Evie and Gordon and doing a lot of brain research. He was the founder of one of the largest brain databases that track kind of mental health issues. And, you know, we have seen this amount of chaos is just really, and this change and this 3D happening is really elevating the stress, the anxiety. How are we handling it? In some places, you know, it feels like post-traumatic job disorder with the amount of things that are coming at us that we can't control. And so it's just being mindful that, you know, we're humans in a very chaotic place. And, you know, people are really emotionally challenged. You know, resilience comes, overwhelm comes in 3 different flavors. It comes in practical overwhelm. Well, I have 7 jobs. There's impossible. You know, I was talking with a client the other day and she's like, we're 4 people down. The first person was down, I could pitch in. The second person down, I could really kind of try and straddle and take on some extra hours. It's like 3 and 4, we're 4 people down. It's not possible. So I said, that's not resilience or failure, that's a mathematical impossibility. So we have practical overwhelm that we have more than we can do. We have to come to terms with that. We have emotional overwhelm because that sense of personal control, when we have too much to do, how are we wrestling with that? That sense that we're not superhuman, right? Just the cognitive overload. Our brains are tired, right? We're doing more. We've got, you know, there's a lot of science that says, you know, every time our brain gets interrupted, it takes 25 minutes to get back on track. Our phones are pinging us, our home is pinging us, our boss is pinging us. It's like a lot of people, and I know Maureen, you as a coach know, we hear this from clients all the time. We feel like we can't even think, right? Just time to think. And that's having a lot of impact on our ability to feel successful. And that's creating some of that stress, mental health, and other issues because it is overwhelming, and we are living in an impossible world. You know, and we're in an unprecedented time and an unprecedented moment, and really thinking about how are we going to survive and thrive in this. And surviving and thriving in a complex world, people and companies experience these different stages throughout our lives, right? And so, and it's a journey, right? We're stepping up, we're stepping back. Sometimes we can go from survival to stability. Something happens and then we're right back to survival, right? And people think and plan in different times and depending on their stage in life. Companies certainly go through it, teams and organizations go through it. We as individuals go through it. And so one of the things we always think about is, where are you on the game board with because again, 3D, I'm having an experience in my life. I'm with my team that's having an experience, with my business that's having experience, and kind of where are we on the game board, right? And so as we think about that, it's really a grounding exercise to think about where you are in your own work life, just from a personal standpoint. Sometimes what we're seeing is just that sense of overwhelm. Feels like we're in a constant state of survival, trying to keep ahead, catch up, do everything on my to-do list. We feel like we're always coming from behind. And that can leave us feeling this sense of emotional or practical survival. And so I wanted to have a chance to really talk about that from a human standpoint and kind of think about where you are, right? And I'm going to have you go into a breakout activity just to kind of talk in small groups. What does it feel like to be in survival in your career or your business? Where are you personally? Where are you and where's the team you might be on, or the colleagues that you're working with? Where's your org? Like what's the reality around you? Does it feel like you're in survival, or maybe you're in a good place and the team might be in different places, and what might be contributing to that? Because how you show up matters. And are you showing up as a frantic doer or a masterful contributor that's kind of managing that dance, that board? So again, we're going to just break out for just a minute and talk a little bit about what's it feel like and where are you today? Where are you? Where's your team? And where's your business? So, and have a chance to talk about where you are in your own reality from survival to significance. Alicia, break us out.
Open the rooms now.
So Gina, what'd you guys talk about? Where are you on the continuum?
There were two out of three were in survival mode, and one was kind of like in the mid, like not, we forgot the exact words that were used to describe stages, but
yeah. So feeling like, yeah, a lot of folks feel like today they're really in that survival mode, right? So are we back, Alicia?
Yes, we're all back.
Who else? What did you talk about? Just take a couple of examples. You feel like, where do you feel like you're on the continuum?
We talked about in our group how it can kind of change depending on the day and the nature of our work, and how also the environment as far as the company and also leadership can really impact, you know, how we feel personally and also at work. And so if they are, you know, if our leadership is more of the like masterful contributor, it might be a little bit easier to move out of survival mode. But if they're being the frantic doer, then that like energy just, you know, translates.
That's really great, Jessica. Emotional contagion, right? Leadership matters. How you lead yourself, how you lead your team, how your leader leads, right? So if you have an organization in chaos that has a leadership team that's very reactive, fragmented, not strategic, that's going to create a sense of chaos for you. One of the things I always talk with teams and individuals about is we can create our own little neighborhood storm, right? Like, job of a leader is kind of bring the weather, right? And so even when we're in it, and recognize it. How do we navigate it? Because there's some things that were in our control and not. That's why we need each other to really think through how do we survive this individually, collectively, and holistically, right? Who else? One more example. That was a great one, Jessica. Anyone else? You know, as you think about where you are,
I'll share.
yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
So I work for a really large company, and I pretty much their whole philosophy is about transformation and creative destruction. And so you never really feel like you're going to get on top of things because things are going to change. And you may say to yourself, well, by next summer, I will be on top of this and I'll have these skills and I'll know what's going on. And things change.
Right. That's a false illusion. It's like a milestone that's never happened. I call it, it's kind of like in many ways we're on a road to hell. Like we're never really going to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so, and we have to kind of have those milestones and mile markers. And we think, my husband always laughs. He teases me. It's like I just need to get through the next 90 days. I just need to get through the next 6 months. And then you get through those 6 months and you're like, I just need to get through another 90 days. And I just need to get through another 6 months. And so it's like the reality, right? Like we're bargaining with ourselves. And I think it's really important that we think about that because we're living in this messy complexity and it's not going away. And so what's funny about it is we keep saying, oh, we'll be caught up, we'll do. But the reality is the water table, we're swimming to shore and the shore keeps getting further away, right? And what do we do when things happen? Like, you ever seen a dog get his head stuck in a door or a cat get stuck in string? What do? They struggle, right? And for those of us who have kids, we've seen this too, right? Like, what do we do when we get stuck or we get stuck in the net? We struggle, right? And we think this is super funny, but what do we do as humans? When we're stuck in the mud or we've got more work to do, we struggle and we just keep pushing, thinking we can produce our way out of it. Just keep swimming harder, do more work. It's like the reality is the more we struggle with the system, the more the system absorbs us. And so that's why I always talk to leaders about struggle and push and getting through it. Maybe a short-term strategy, but it's not a long-term strategy. And have to think about how is this struggle really impacting us as leaders? Because we're really in today's time all producing, managing leaders. And so how are we struggling with the system and or operating in the messy system? And so it's just a mindset to think about, are we struggling? Or are we really recognizing that the system is messy and we're going to have to learn how to go with the system versus fight the system? So a lot of times, as leaders, we're struggling. And I just really want you to think about where you are in your career and life. Are you in control of your time or is time in control of you? I always say, whenever I'm starting a coaching engagement, hey, are you in control of you or is the system in control of you? This is really important in terms of getting the mindset, because if it's not going away, how are we going to manage, live, and strap a saddle on all this chaos? And so just really want to think about where you are in terms of how much control you have. Like, I am purposeful. I have little to no control. I can barely catch my breath. I know we all feel that way sometimes, but if you're looking longitudinally, 3 months, 6 months, do you live in a state of little to no control where I'm catching my breath? There are periods in our life where we might feel that way. But if you can't breathe, you can't lead, right? And so is it episodic control? Like I have a little ebb and flow, a few spots here and there where I can catch my breath, then I get back into swimming again. Do I have good days and even weeks where I can find a sense of stability and balance? Am I consistently reevaluating and seizing control, or am I in control of my time, my schedule, my life? Is well paced for me personally and professionally. And it's not a right or wrong, but a perpetual state of survival is not a great place to be. And so I put this out for you to think about, how do we as humans seize kind of what is important to us to secure the control that we need in our life, whatever it is. And everybody has a different meter, so it's your own unique recipe. So I'll quote Warren Buffett, who's a gazillionaire, and he has a great quote called "Busy is the new stupid." And he and Bill Gates were having a conversation. These are two of the most successful people in the world, and I'll share just a minute of what Bill had to say.
I also remember Warren showing me his calendar, and
I love this.
I had every minute packed, and I thought that was the only way you could do things. And the fact that he is so careful about his time.
Can I show this to the audience? Yeah.
He has days
that there's nothing on.
That there's nothing on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to show.
The best.
And
well, this is October.
It's very high tech. Be careful. You might not understand.
I'm going to hold. I'm not going to show the thing. But this is the week of April, of which there are only 3 entries for a week.
Yeah, there'll be 4 maybe by April.
It's always interesting, right? In terms of, how do you begin to think about your time, right? And I like the fact that, Warren Buffett, who's got probably kind of one of the most wealthiest people in the world, says time's the only thing you can't buy, right? And so as you begin to think about, and this is a conversation we have with lots of clients and coaches that are really trying to build careers that matter, is time and thinking is our most precious asset, right? And so how are we beginning to think about how we use our time? And also, in terms of just our brain power, right? We're living in a creative economy where we're solving problems, and we need kind of our brain power to do great things, to solve bigger problems, to, engage with the world. And it's our most precious resource. And with this sense of busyness, we're just tired. Our brains are tired. So at a time when we need our brains more, our brains are exhausted because we're caught in the busyness trap and the work. And so, and of course, Thomas Edison always said there's no substitution for hard work. And I think working hard is super important, but we have to realize, as we think about, as we move up, we have to fight the good fight to lead. And so just envisioning your future and expanding where you want to go, to what level do you want to grow and aspire, because it really is, the more you grow, the more you move from being that producer to manager to leader. And it's not just a title change, it's really how you begin to think about your time and brain power, right? How you manage your work, how you think about priorities, right? And so those skills continue to be built. But the one thing that's mission critical is figuring out how to kind of prioritize your time so you can be impactful. And the higher up you go, the more brain power you're going to need to really solve complex, multifaceted challenges. And so as you think about growing and climbing, it's like, well, I have to work harder to get ahead. From a coaching perspective, I have some different perspective in terms of what holds people back. And some of the behaviors really, when a lot of folks are kind of caught in that production trap, Harriet Breaker, you've heard of type A, kind of very, very driven people. And kind of the type A, B studies. Harriet Breaker framed something, and particularly focusing on women, is what she calls the type E, which is everything to everyone, multiple roles, people who want to excel at everything. I want to achieve in all aspects. I want to do 20 projects. I'm taking on more. It can be any professional, any age, any position who tries to juggle roles and desires to achieve. And because we are high achievers, we don't want to disappoint. We want to believe that we can accomplish more. So we just keep swimming. And this is particularly hard on women, but it's no longer a women's issue. And the net result is we overextend our time and resources to try and meet all of these demands that candidly we're being set up for failure. There's no way we can achieve everything. We can't achieve everything on our to-do list. We can't achieve and meet the needs of our organization. We can't achieve and meet all the needs in the public health system. There's more needs than we can achieve. And so as we begin to think about our time, I call it being cursed by competent. The more we demonstrate we can do, the more people want a piece of us, right? So competence has a side effect. And then we realize we have limitations, and then we get to feel bad about the fact that we couldn't meet our to-do list or do all of these things. And it creates a sense of inadequacy. And then we start beginning to feel like we're back in the survival roadmap, right? And so what do? We work harder. And again, we struggle with the system. We try and do more. We try and figure out, how do we fight this sense of doing more? And recently I did this workshop with a group of attorneys in corporate counsel, and I had 35 folks, and I asked everybody, how many of you felt successful last week? Just one thing. And out of the entire group, nobody raised their hand. And I said, you're telling me that in an entire week of work, you had not one success, right? Because how we think about success. And I said, now go back and tell me the good stuff that really happened. And when they came back in, they began to see how they were thinking about success and milestones. And because we're so busy thinking we have to win the race, we forget that we're winning in different ways every day. So again, we think we got to go the distance, but the reality is how we think about that. And so that has an impact on our ability and what we're doing. And so type A, they're focused, they're time urgent, but focused, they're competitive with a clarified focus, quantifiable measures of success, responsible for my success. Success equals achievement. Type E is really fragmented. We're overscheduling, we're collaborative, and that means we want to be involved, and then we begin to overcommit, and then the bar gets raised, and we're not so much focused as we're lucky, right? And success equals achievement in everything. And so we're trying to kind of have it all at one time. And so it's just beginning to think, what are my beliefs about success and kind of how I think about my world, creating the kind of world, creating the kind of career, creating kind of the life that I want. Am I living in a focused world, or am I living in a fragmented world? And I just want you to really think for a minute, in thinking your own beliefs. What do you think about your time and your contribution, volume or value? And so just kind of reflect for a minute. What beliefs do you have about working harder, doing more, taking on more? And if you have a minute, just to kind of drop a note into chat. But if you think about working harder, I'd just like to take one volunteer to say, do you think you can produce your way out of your current survival state? Is it a short-term, mid-term, long-term problem? Who might just take a volunteer to share their own experience of your own beliefs about how you're kind of eating life like a feral cat or trying to do more? Anybody willing to kind of think about where they are currently? Be brave. Who feels like they're eating life like a feral cat? Maureen, you're smiling.
I love that image. It's so true. And
Yeah.
I feel like most of my clients are in that space too, even though they might not describe it as such. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I will be honest. I am back in coaching myself because I said
Yeah.
I'm back into it, the production trap. We've had some
Yeah.
great growth. We've got some great clients. We got lots going on. I got lots going on in life. I'm like, oh my God, we're always in that journey of it's never a destination. It's always, today we seem to be in a good place. Then bam, a health issue happens. Aging parent has an issue that happens and we slide right back down. But just having that awareness of, stopping and asking, how are we experience life? And again, I love this, that, what a leader says strategic yes to and strategic no to is mission critical, right? And I love this quote because even a large forest fund gets full, right? Like we have great capacity and people can do exponential things, but Reality is we all have a limitation. And, in the type E, we just don't want to believe we have limitations, right? That we can keep doing it. We can work harder. We can get ahead. But the reality is sometimes we got to take a step back to take a step ahead. And so it's just, again, thinking about this mindset. And that's why I call it the production trap, right? We think we're moving forward, but we're really trapped, right? In this busyness. And so one of the things, that I have and, that I talk about that Breaker's work talks about is how accessible do I need to be? And do I need to take on as many things to demonstrate my value? If I'm not present or I'm not doing, I'm not valuable, right? If people see how hard I'm working, I'm going to be perceived as more value. And if I work extra hours and I take on more work and I deliver more, I'm just going to gain respect and prove my worth. I might get a promotion. I might get more resources. I'm going to receive recognition for my value, and I'm going to grow because I'm working hard. But how many of you have had a colleague that does half the work that you do and gets ahead? How many of you know? I had a leader at CDC, and she laughed. She was so mad because she was like, every plum assignment that comes in, and my colleague gets it. I'm out producing him 3-1. And I said, well, that's great. But as we began to look at it, is he getting the plum assignments because he's smarter than you, or there's some sort of dynamic? Or if you are a leader and you've got one person frantically working on 13 projects and you've got a really important project and somebody's working on 4, who are you going to give that really important assignment to? The person that has time to really work and focus on something important, or somebody who's just eating like feral cat? And so over the course of the year, she began to recognize that volume was not value, and also began to get more time and energy back, and actually has been promoted twice since then. So again, it's coming to the realization that doing more does not necessarily create value. And also, I love this from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. It's a great book that was written. It's a little bit of a history book that talks about power principles. What happens when a stock floods the market? If there's too much of you, what happens? Your stock goes down, right? Flood the market with a lot of stock, gets devalued. What happens if you have too much inventory in a store? It goes on sale, right? So, too much circulation, too much of you, paradoxically, can devalue you. And this is the paradox of working harder to get ahead. It's not necessarily there's a time and place where doing more will actually hold you back in your career. And I've had multiple professionals that have gotten into the production trap. Jane was at a law firm. She came in during kind of the pandemic and got 5 times the results of her predecessor, and only to be rewarded the next year with a new boss. And they said, I thought I was being promoted. Look at what we've done. She said, well, we never saw you at the partner meetings. You were so busy producing, you didn't build the kind of relationships. The results themselves, while stellar, she could have produced 3 times as much relationship and worked half as hard and built really strong relationships and would have been advanced. Now, the good news, Jane learned her lesson and she's now in a leadership role. But again, what's the line between producing well and overproducing to less value? Christy was the same way. Christy was like, I just can't get ahead. She came in for a time management discussion. I'm like, we looked at her job. I'm like, Christy, you don't have time management problem. You have 7 jobs. And when she left her company, they replaced her with 7 people. Is that not insane? 7 people, right? A lot of people, person leaves, you get some responsibilities. It's a slippery slope. And after she left her next job that we coached around, they replaced her with 3 people. So she was making some improvement, but it took her 3rd job maneuver to actually right size her job so she could step into a leadership role, right? Producing well, leading is not producing, right? And Chuck, he was producing huge amounts of work, but nobody saw him other than the results don't speak for themselves. He didn't have time to build critical relationships, take time to reflect, be innovative. There's other aspects of your career that are so important than just producing. So we definitely want to begin to think about our production. And can working too hard actually hinder your ability to be advanced, promoted, achieve next level goals, even live a life that matters? And so I'm putting this construct in your head to really think about, if you do feel like you're a little bit in survival, it's a great time to really take a step back and go, where do I need to be? What am I doing? How do I begin to seize control and begin to put more purpose in and intention into your career planning? One of it is just an action item is a strategic recalibration and thinking about work. How many of you set your time like I'm working to 100%? Like I have a to-do list. I can think about all the things I can do, and I'm at 100% this week. And actually you're probably at 150% because we know we can't meet all our obligations and deadlines. So we're pushing to that. But what happens when there's a fire of the day? Do you have any time to have collegial conversation with people? Like we can't work to 100% because we're not building in time for relationships. We're not building in time for learning. So already when we come in and plan our work week, if we're only focusing on production, we're already stuck in the trap, right? And so, I have folks kind of look at what's my ratio? How much time am I doing? How much time am I managing and working with my team? How much time am I leading? What's the right ratio for where you are? But getting kind of a balance of out of just the production is mission critical. Even if you have 10% extra time to lead, connect, do things. And so you have to be able to see where you are in doing your own calibration. How do others see you? Do they see you as a doer? Do they see you as somebody who's managing well? Do they see you as somebody who's balancing, producing, managing, and leading? As I said, in today's time, we're all producing, managing, and leading. So we won't have time for this exercise, but I do ask you, and it's a very important thing. And I remember when I did this, I actually was depressed for a week because one of my coaches asked me to do a time summary, like how many hours in a week I needed. And it was like, okay, she said, go through sleep, it's just a time motion study. And I came back, she said, how'd it go? I said, I'm terribly depressed. I need like 247 hours in a week, right? Like in my mind, I was doing so much more than I actually had physical time. So then we had to kind of look at a month and begin to look at how you calibrate your life. So it's a real sobering. Do it with a colleague, do it with a friend. My husband and I did it. We had a real laugh because it was like, well, if we walked the dog and took a picnic and took our son to, it's like, how do we multitask and begin to do things? And we just had a lot of laughter around it because we were trying to do kind of super multitasking to see if we could get more in. It was really fun, but it was very sobering. You have to really think about where you're spending your time. And the first thing, and why I do this, talk and bring it into coaching and make it matter, is you got to really think about it and ask yourself, are you caught in the production trap, right? And am I so in the work that I'm not working on the work and on my life and on my leadership and on the other things, right? So caught in the doing that I'm devaluing myself and my growth and my possibilities because my brain, my leadership, my growth is really not in the doing. And so what can you do? Well, first, if it's about you, I always say, well, is it you? Is it your boss? Is it the company? So if it's you, you have to do some self-reflection in terms of your priorities for value, right? And you got to set boundaries on commitments. Like, what can I do and what do I need to do to be successful? And how do I move from reactive to proactive? And it can take some people a year. It can take some people a new job. It can take a whole new energy field to get into it, but start the journey. It takes clear direction. It begins to think about not planning in a classic kind of way, but just being very mindful about what I'm building, what I'm doing, what I'm creating. And it's really important for strategic yes and strategic no. A leader gets more value from what they say no to than what they say yes to, right? And so that's a real important criteria to think about. And come to terms with the fact that you can't do everything. And what I find, and when people kind of step into this, they realize they get more respect when they start setting boundaries, that you as a leader get more respect. And you have an opportunity to, work through those boundaries. But if you have a boss, you got to think about it. I had a client that had a boss that said, you can't say no, and I'm not giving you any more resources. And so the reality was it was an untenable position that she was being not set up success or supported. So we had to make a decision that good boss, bad boss. And try and influence. And so she ended up having to move to a different part of the company because it really, as much as she was capable in setting boundaries and negotiating, was falling on deaf ears. So if you're not being supported, you got to think about how long do I want to sustain this, or what do I need to do to get to a place where I am supported in a realistic and powerful way. And that's when I got to think about an internal or an external move. But sometimes we join a company where, you join a Elon Musk company, you're getting on the boat and you're going to work 24/7 and you're going to get an experience, but is the experience you want? Or GE or some of the pharma companies or CPG. It's a fast ride. And there are times when you want that and you're signing on for it. We're a culture of 24/7 demand. You work for Accenture, nothing to be called to a conference call at 11 o'clock at night. They just expect it. So, is the culture right for you at the time of life? Does it fit? Is it aligned to the life and career you want to manage? And if it's not, how do we plan for a smart exit or find a space within the business that maybe has there are subcultures within cultures within cultures. And so I bring this, to really ask you, how you want to spend your time. How would you, be purposeful and looking at how you're spending your time versus how you'd like to spend your time. And think about really where you are and where you want to be. And by the way, getting out of the production trap is not something that's going to happen today. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. For some people, it's really a journey. And I know for me, and some of the clients, we know, and we're being very conscious about it. It might take 6 months, might take a full year. We might have life and period challenges, but the goal is what is stretch. If it's a 90-day, it's a stretch. If it's 6 months, it's a double stretch. If it's a year, it's become your job, right? And so really think about where you are and where you want to be, because the production trap, if you focus on it, good news is maybe you might even get a life, right? Like if you really think about it, and take a step back so you can really take a step ahead. So as you think about and leave from today, what behaviors can you recognize that might be driving down your stock? What steps can you take? Is it you kind of thinking about how you're valuing your time? Is it your relationships at work? Are you getting supported in the way you need? Did you join a culture that's all about no boundaries? Or we're going through a crazy merger and we're going through it for a period of time? And what resources and support systems you need to achieve your goals? I have a coach to help me get out of the production trap and help me do it. And whether you're coaching, mentoring, or have a good boss that can help you and help you develop, what do you need to get out of the production trap and build a career and life that matters? So just closing today, check in on your motivations and beliefs. May seem impossible, but it starts with you and it is possible. And so hopefully I've given you some things to think about today. Any questions or any thoughts or comments? I know we have a hard stop, but I'm happy to stay on for anyone who wants to ask questions or provide any comments, or if I can be of service to you. Anyone?
All right. Well, thank you all for dropping your thoughts and feedback into the chat. We will go ahead and wrap up today's session. So thank you again so much for joining us for today's program. Please join me in thanking Jodie for sharing her expertise with us today. If you enjoyed today's session, we of course highly recommend for you to join us for all of our monthly virtual programs, including our next webinar on June 5th with another career coach, Daniel Andrews. We encourage you also to schedule a complimentary career strategy session, including with one of our coaches, including Jodie. You'll receive an email from us soon after today's event with more information. We will also be sharing a survey for feedback. So please, we encourage you to share your feedback. Share not only how you felt about today's session, but if there are other topics that you want to hear about in the future from us, so that we can make sure that we are bringing you the content that you care about. So lastly, on behalf of the Emory Alumni Association, we want to thank you again for learning with us. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.